Hi, welcome back to the studio. So my name's Neil and this is Paintstew. I have another set of paintings to show you. It's another exploration using resin. In this series, these are 16 by 16 inch panels, and I'm working with an odd number of panels, so these are a little bit larger than some of the other ones I've shown you. They took a turn that they seem really mysterious. These are starting to feel subterranean. They're starting to feel like they're underwater, but they also have elements of letters and letterforms and numbers and symbols. And so I think a lot of that stuff is coming up in my process from my experience years ago with letters as a billboard painter. And so a lot of that stuff comes back around for me in my process. It kind of comes out of my mind, I guess, and I kind of wonder what it's like to jumble these forms up together to create an image that kind of feels like memory. Maybe it kind of feels like things are floating in and out of focus. So floating is the key element here for me. Now I've been working on these for about a year and they're still about in the mid-process range. I don't think that they're quite finished yet, but again, it's a layering process. So I start at point A with a composition reacting with the materials and the surface of the board, and then over time reacting and restating layers that have come before. And so this kind of evolutionary process becomes very improvisational as well. And I really believe that it resonates with my music making, this idea that things tend to happen in the moment in a reaction to something from before, but all within the it's not like I'm just grasping at ideas. This is all sort of within the bookends of an exploration. And so this particular exploration again is a subterranean knowledge or subterranean sort of things underneath the surface. You'll see what I mean. So here we go. Here is an example. You can see these are 16 by 20 and they are again cradled birch boards, and or sorry, not 16 by 20, 16 by 16 inches square, and they are acrylic resin, again that art resin, which I really enjoy. By the way, some folks were wondering, these edges, when I get done with the process, when I feel like these have all resolved, then I put these on a sander and sand the ends off, and so they become nice and clean and flat. I'll show you an example of that in another video. So here is an example, and you can see some letter forms in here, some graphic elements. These radiating lines really came out in this work, and these bubble shapes, there's lots of poured painting in here. And what I do when I paint these is I turn them around. Now, being squares, they are really great for playing with different orientations, and I do that as I'm painting on them. So they're kind of orbital compositions or circular or rotating like compositions. The minute that I added these lines here, I started to feel linear perspective, you know, this idea that these converging lines, they're kind of converging somewhere in here. And then this space that was left over formed kind of a rectangle. So it's sort of like within the picture plane there is another picture plane, and then there is this idea of moving in or moving out. So I guess space has come into this project as well. You can see all of this in this series. I allowed a lot of the paint to flow in the early stages in its own way. So I have lots of drips and lots of poured areas of paint in the different layers, and these are getting to be pretty deep. And so elements on the front layers cast shadows on elements behind. So that idea that maybe you can look behind something that happened is kind of an interesting quality of the surface of these paintings. Now, I'll work this process a little bit more. I'm not quite sure. These new elements, these are the newest elements, these sort of radiating lines, have really caused the painting to have either a horizontal feel or a vertical feel, so they feel totally different this way. And in this vertical format, the letterforms seem to come out a little bit more the way that they're oriented, and that's fascinating to me, that different elements can really maybe be accentuated or hidden just by rotating the composition. So now the R is a little bit less visible. So I'm playing around with these now. So letterforms, these bubble shapes. There's also letterforms in previous layers. I don't know if you can see that way back in here. There's some hidden layers. But these started to feel really like you were looking through water. All of these, there's a sense of looking in and through and kind of discovery and wonder. So here's one, and then there's a couple others here. Let me set that one down. Here's another one, same kind of elements in a way, slightly different color palette. You can see, let me kind of get this up really close here. You can see the subtlety in those layers, very much environmental feeling sort of piece. And they're kind of sinister feeling too, I guess. They're feeling sort of, I don't know, like something's gonna float by or something. Here's one with some more letterforms. And I like exploring letterforms too, so I love the idea of serifs and sans serifs and sort of thick and thin of letterforms and their geometries. I really am interested in that. This one also has a few arrow-like forms in here. I'm going to try to get this so you can see it without the reflection, but there's an arrow came out of this one. So graphic symbols, windings are kind of in a layer in here. So this went from organic bubble-like forms to letter forms and drawing symbols and flat shapes to drips and poured paint, and now of course this last layer, which is these sort of parallelograms. They're not really that either. Trapezoidal shapes with these converging lines. Now, I figured out the dimensions of right to left and top to bottom of this rectangle kind of make a golden rectangle, and then these angles, these all sort of recede and sort of gather at specific points. So that was very much intentional to kind of really imply or add that linear perspective element to these. So these are another exploration using the layering technique, but also in this idea of illusionary space or actual space. And I really hope that that's interesting to you. Boy, it's really interesting to me. These seem to be about halfway done. These videos are just introductions of these multiple series I have going simultaneously in the studio, and more videos to come. So thank you so much.